morning, everyone. My name is Ruth Njoki-Warohio. I'm marketing lead in TBM. Thank you so much for joining us today as we begin our witch hunt trail on how to detect, disrupt, and defeat your cyber threats in advance or as they come. Before we begin, I'd like you to think about a simple question. What is so important within your security environment? What is so critical? What is so dear to you that you know as an individual or an organization or as a team or a business that you are not ready to get to pay the price for losing or getting an attack from a cyber security threat? As I begin, I'll give you a brief through about who TBM is, and then we can proceed from there. So today we'll be having an IBM I2 visual investigation where you're gonna learn how to create an actionable intelligence within your environment. Our key speaker today will be Mr. Nicholas Sampson. He's a consultant, investigation, and a link analyst in IEA Solution Advisor. And he's a subject expert in I2 investigation too. Our second speaker also will be Abraham Oshina, who is a TBM cybersecurity analyst. So who is TBM? TBM, currently we are celebrating 30 years of being a Kenyan-based ICT company, where we deploy all variety of ICT solutions to all types of clients, varying from IT infrastructure, IT security, IT software solution, and professional services. Yes, we might be based in Kenya, but we are not limited to Kenya. We also do our business outside Kenya within the East African region. Our clientele base is enterprise businesses, SMEs, financial sector, public, private, telecom, NGO, GEO, and other industries. And our motto is enabling business through technology. So as I said, our speaker who's going to take us through security roadmap, because in every company, security roadmap is very key. And what is your security roadmap? Your security roadmap will be taken through by Abraham Oshina, who, as I said, a cybersecurity analyst with over 9 years experience in East Africa. He has a specialist discipline in SIM, which is a security information event management, and SOA as security orchestration and incident response. Even though he's a specialist in these two kind of solutions, he's even more skilled in security compliance, analytics, and audit. And his, as I say, hobbies or interests, he enjoys watching documentaries and shows that discuss about scientific things within the IT, agriculture, technology space, and historical discovery. So over to you, Abraham, as you take us through our security roadmap journey. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? You can hear me, yes?
Yes, we can.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Abraham Oshina. I'm a cybersecurity engineer that focuses on optimization or SIM optimization. That is to have cybersecurity intelligence derived from a SIM with regards to detecting cybersecurity threats. Then I also have an understanding on incident management with regards to the playbooks or the runbooks or the procedures that an organization needs to take to contain threats that have been detected by the analyst team. So I just want to share my screen here. Can you see my screen? Can you see?
Not yet.
Just a second here. I'm going to help you to share it. Oh, it's actually this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe you can see my screen, yes?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll just take a few minutes to have some precursor introductory concepts with regards to cybersecurity before I hand over the main event to Nicholas. So there are some precursors that we need to have as an organization, because even if you have all the tools and even all the personnel and you don't have a security roadmap, you're not going anywhere. So a security roadmap is key in developing a strong cybersecurity posture. So the whole process of understanding your security roadmap, how to define it and implement it, and also review it, is something that is exceptionally important, and it should be well thought out, and it should also involve managerial input because it affects the entire organization. So a security roadmap is mandatory for any organization to have a strong cybersecurity posture. You can just see something. Right. So let's just talk briefly about the stages involved in the cybersecurity roadmap. So there are a number of ways to conceptualize this, but I'll put it in 5 steps. So I'll just go through them briefly to understand what they are and what the goal is. So the goal is to get to stage 5, which is optimized, where you have automated and proactive approach to cybersecurity breaches, rather than have a manual and reactive approach to cybersecurity breaches. So the first one is ad hoc. So ad hoc just means that there is no documentation, there are no security policies, there is no structured way on how you handle breaches, right? So it depends on individual heroic efforts, right? There is just no standardization on anything about anything. Yes, thank you. That's the ad hoc. Now, the repeatable one is whereby you have a security policy that's defined, all right? So an example of a security policy would be maybe user anomaly. So you have policies that define user anomaly. So an example would be you have a policy which says this group of people should not access a particular system in a particular time. And if they do, then that's an anomaly. That's an example of a security policy. So the repeatable one is whereby you have a security policy, but that's it. You still do not have a structured approach on how to handle breaches. You have no standardized reporting. You have no processes or procedures that are documented. You have no KPIs. All right, so it's very ad hoc. All right, but you have a security roadmap defined. Now the third one is the defined, whereby you have a cybersecurity roadmap defined. You have a methodology on how to handle a breach or an incident. All right, so when you have an incident in your organization, you have methodology or documentation or standard processes and procedures on how to handle cybersecurity breaches. You also have standardized reporting from the analysts of what we call the RCA, the root cause analysis, or the the output of the investigation of an incident. So that is there. But now the issue with here is that this data cannot be gathered quantitatively. You can't measure progress. You can't tell where you are 6 months ago because the data cannot be collected. You don't have the capability or the skill of gathering the data of the incidents that you have been managing, even though you're managing them in a structured approach. So you have to be able to measure your progress. So stage 4 is the managed one, whereby now you are able to do all of the above, but now you can gather the data. All right, you can gather, for example, how many incidents have you closed, how many type of incidents that you have closed. So you can collect metrics of the cases that you have resolved or detected, the threats you have detected, and how many you have resolved. But you can't interpret the data, right? So if you can't interpret the data, then you do not know how to make informed cybersecurity decisions. So the last one, which is optimized, is now whereby you have all of the above, but now you can interpret the data, and this data has a positive feedback loop, which increases your cybersecurity posture because it enables the cybersecurity team to make proper decisions. So a brief example of this would be, you have noticed that the analysts are taking too long with regards to determining the root cause analysis of authentication. So perhaps you need to improve your authentication methodology so that you're able to detect those threats in time. So that's now about the journey. Now, to achieve, so there are some key fundamentals that we need to understand before now I hand over the presentation to Nikolai, that we need to understand. So to achieve, security optimization, you need dedicated personnel. I cannot overemphasize this. You have to have dedicated analysts and incident response personnel. They cannot be shared, right? So they have to be dedicated. You cannot have them as a shared resource because of the level of effort that is required to detect the threats and stop the threats, which is what the analyst and the incident response team do. KPIs have to be documented for the personnel. Otherwise, you cannot have a top-down approach, or you can't have governance of their progress with regards to your cybersecurity operations. Of course, they have to be trained, they have to be skilled. This is a very technical thing, so that has to be put in place. You have to have a matrix that defines their capability with regards to their particular roles. Of course, they have to be remunerated, otherwise you're going to have a high turnover rate, whereby an analyst comes in and then after a few months they leave. So you want to avoid this thing, whether it's an analyst or the incident response personnel. And then as an organization, you need to have a training roadmap in place. So this is very, very, very important. Otherwise, you cannot get to the optimized level. The second, the last but not least, is the standards. You need to have standards. You need to have detailed cybersecurity policies, and these policies are not cast in stone. They are reviewed constantly by your team. You need to have documentation on your analysis methodology. Do you have documentation on such? When you have an incident, what are you supposed to do with an incident? How are you supposed to manage the incident? All right, so that has to be documented as a best practice. Do you have, reporting on root cause analysis? Root cause analysis is just simply the output of an investigation by your analysts, right? So they have to be structured and they have to be standardized. And then all of the above have to be collected quantitatively so that you can measure progress. Lastly, you need to have global visibility of your sources of data. All right, so your sources of data have to be organized properly. They cannot be disorganized. Otherwise, it's going to give the analysts a difficult time to make sense of what's going on. So you need to have them organized, and you need to have them in a grid. So for example, if it's securing the remote workplace, you can see that the VPN on the table there under the log sources column is highlighted. So VPN will give you threats that deal with APTs, advanced persistent threats. But firewalls will give you APTs, securing the cloud, compliance, incident response, and etc. So you need to have this kind of structure with regards to your sources of data and with regards to your security infrastructure. So with that brief introduction, I want to quickly hand over the presentation to Nikolai to Nicholas. So thank you very much for your attention.
So good morning, everybody. I will start this presentation by introducing myself. So I am Nicolas Sanson. I'm working for IBM as a consultant for any questions of visual investigation, link analysis, and discover hidden relation. And I was previously in charge of the distributing the I2 software solutions before the IBM acquisition. And I worked in that domain since more than 15 years, building trainings, deployments, and all the solutioning for I2 for French-speaking countries and also in the MEA, Middle East and Africa countrysides. What is very important for me, in addition of the roadmap presented previously, is that when we are talking about investigation, when we are talking about understanding a threat, we have two main ways of thinking. And the first one is quite the standard and the traditional one. This is something we call the deductive thinking. So we start from a theory, we know what we are searching for, and we would try to, by using the data, confirm or infirm that theory. And this is exactly what we call the deductive thinking, and this is used for detection, because you already have in mind a kind of threat, a strange behavior you want to investigate, and you would use the data to confirm or not that. So this is a three-step process. The first one is the theory, then you make the hypothesis, and based on the result of those hypotheses, you can confirm or not. I2, the visual investigation, does not work like that, because we want to search for strange threats that we don't already know everything. So we will do exactly the opposite. That's the reason why also we call it visual investigation, because we start from the observation. We would map all the network, all the activity network on your cyber, as an example. And you would have a huge map. And by trying to do some model on those maps, you would be able to discover new threats, new frauds, all that stuff. So you see that the way of working is exactly the opposite. And finally, of course, we would be able to obtain a theory and make the assumption. And this is really what we target for I2. And that's the reason why, if you remember the roadmap presented previously, it goes at the fifth step, because this is something you should do after preparing everything, preparing your roadmap to cyber investigation. And why it's so important? Let's assume that you want to investigate, and that's so common actually when we are talking about cyber threat. You want to investigate a data leaks. So some of your data from your company, from your organization, from your government has been stolen. Okay, if you do the deductive thinking, you would have the automated detection and you would discover the data has been stolen. Fine, but that's not enough, because if you really want to prevent, if you really want to go to the court and all that stuff, you need to go further. Very often, even in the standard the standard detection tools so far, they also provide event connections. So they put together the events, the frauds, the threats which has been discovered. But as you can see on the screen, this is still not enough to discover who could be behind that. And if you use I2, then you would be able to discover the two ends behind that by doing what we call the contextualization. So you would map, exactly as you see on the screen, all the links behind the activity you want to investigate. And that's based on that, you would be able to connect. If the event is, as you can see here, this pink bubble in your chart, you would really be able to connect the entry point within the network and the exit point within the network. And by doing that, you would really be able to investigate. And that's what we propose when we are talking about I2, creating automatized the observation of what happened within your network. And that's why it's very important to do that. And I will switch from an example, a real example I had to work on a long time ago for an insurance company, and they want to investigate, to use what I explained, to investigate if they have a fraudulent network behind a car crashes declaration. Okay, so they really want to investigate that. And what we did at I2 first, we built something we call the ELP model, entity linked properties. So because you remember we want to observe, so to observe something we need to do the modelization. And this is what you can see here. You have the insurance contract, the contract as holders, you can see, and if it is a person, you could have co-holders. If it is an organization, you could have a representative, and that insurance contract has been sold by organizations, and you have all the information about the contract information, such as the address, the phone numbers, and things like that. The car itself, of course, because it was a car insurance. And if there is a disaster, there is a declaration of disaster and all that stuff. And this is very important. And most probably you can use also that model for cyber investigation, because let's assume that the declaration of disaster could be done by a website. We would have all the cyber traffic and also the data which has been used within the cyber to declare the disaster. So as you can see, we are very close. So this is the first step when we are talking about an I2 project. We do that model, and once it's done, it becomes quite easy to create, as Ruth explained, the actionable intelligence. That's the KPI. That's the result of I2. That's what we expect. And let's assume that we have 3 car crashes which has been burned. So this is what you can see here, 3 events. And as an investigator, you want to make a connection between that. You want to see if you could have a network, because that network is the best way to hide fraudulent activity. So we would, as you can see here, just follow the links using the model I explained previously, and we discover that those 3 incidents are linked to cars, and you have information. You can set as many information as you want on the chart. And then if I go at something we call level 2, you see, because from the event we have 2 entities, we discover that those 2 events are linked to the same insurance contract. And if you continue your investigation, you discover that here, even if you have 2 different contracts, finally, the 2 owners, even if it is a company on one side and a person on the other side, share the same address. And why it's so important to have that view, to be able to observe that? Because if you consider that you have a fraudulent activity on those networks and you do that map, that chart, then you know that if you do some reimbursement, the money will go to the same pocket. So that's a perfect example of that inductive thinking. There is no proof, but with that chart, you can make the assumption that if you do some reimbursement, or if the reimbursements have been already done, they go to the same pocket. That's it. And that's I2. And you see why it's so important, because by observing, then you can discover something which is not a theory you already know. That's what we call actionable intelligence. And if I add another piece of information, we would discover that those 3 cars, which has been burned, has been removed by the same auto repair. And then you see on the chart, you have a network, and that's very interesting. And as an investigator, what I will do, I will search for possible connection between that auto repair and Aline Renard or that company, because it means that we could also imagine that you pay as an insurance company to remove those cars, and even the money you give to that auto repair could go to the same pocket, or at the opposite, that's the auto repair which organized that network of car crashes to make money himself. And then consider that now, of course, that example is from the real world, but in the cyber world, it would be exactly the same, because most of the threats, most of the fraud on the cyber world are also done to make money. And this is really what we need to investigate to have the full view of a cyber threat. You consider a malware is also a way to make money and all that stuff. And if you want to have this very precise prevention policy, you need to really understand what happened behind the scene. And this is what we can do using I2. So we talk about knowing and understanding what could be behind the scene. The best way is also to use I2 to investigate the financial transactions, how it would work. Sorry. And let's assume that we want to investigate this kind of standard money laundering schema. So it's a 3-step process. There is the placement. So it means that first we need to collect the dirty money, then the money, it goes to the bank, and then it would be washed, cleaned, and finally integrate by using luxury goods, flats or apartments, cars, or whatever. So this is what we want to observe, and then we would use I2, we would use the visual investigation to cross-check, as you can see here, levels of information. The first level would be the transactions by themselves. The second level would be information provided by the CRM of the company or the orders of the bank account. And in that example, we would also use the social media information. And we want to make all those information together to observe really where the money goes or what happened to that. As a result, we would obtain this kind of chart. I will go a little bit more quickly on that, and how it would be built by connecting, as you can see here, as many sources as you want, as many layers of information as you want, to build each pieces of the network you want to investigate. So you see the source A using 2 layers give you those 2 parts on the chart. I would add the second source with 2 other layers, and it would help me to complete the chart, and it's a never-ending story. So I can add as many new sources as I want, and it would be the best way to obtain this full 360 view of activity, to have a full observation panel of of the activity and on what you want to investigate. And once you build the chart, then I2 will allow you to search for complex connections because we don't want to investigate the path of money just between two accounts, but use some in between accounts and things like that. So it would be the first purpose of I2. The second purpose of I2 is to discover some aliases, some homonyms, some fake identities which has been used, but at the end, as we saw previously, the money goes to the same people, and discover the activity and also some geographical proximity, as we would see in the demonstration. I will immediately switch to. Before the demonstration, I just want to add that that final slide. When we are talking about I2, when we are talking about visual investigation, it's very important to position it in the roadmap of investigation in that case. And you see that very usually we use automatized tool to detect and do some declaration. This is what we are here very often. Even in the cyber investigation, you can use some tool which would detect and reveal alerts on your network. Something has been compromised, something wrong happened, there is a strange behavior, as it has been explained. The way the VPN has been used is strange because blah 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 and so on. And then you can start to do some forensic investigation and try to do some network remediation. That's fine. But we need also, it becomes really mandatory to have an efficient prevention policy to understand what is behind the scene, what was the purpose, what was the motivation of the attack. In other words, to compare what happened with the real world. And the real world is the purpose of I2, make that comparison between what has been detected and what was the purpose, the motivation, the invisible ends behind the attack. And this is really here I2 sits in the roadmap. So we would switch to the live demonstration. I will go on this new virtual machine, and here you see the I2 most famous screen, the most famous software. The name of that software is Analyst Notebook. As I said, it has been built 30 years ago, so it's very famous and well-known software. And this is a standard for all the investigators worldwide, for police forces, of course, for intelligence agencies as well, but also for lots of private companies. Even NGOs are using I2 to do those context investigation, visualization of what happened. And I can give you examples of most of the mobile phone companies, as an example, use I2 to investigate complex frauds. Lots of pharmaceutical laboratories, supermarkets chains are using I2 as well. Banks, insurance company, as you see. So that's a de facto standard for investigation worldwide. And let's assume I need to investigate the financial transaction of a company, and the name of that company is Peter Goupil. I will start by doing a visual query, and that visual query is that one. I will just open it to let you see how it works. And when we're talking about a query, a visual query in I2, because why we call it visual query, because this is a visual investigation. You just have to draw what you are searching for. And in our case here, we are searching for an organization which has bank accounts, and those bank accounts should have transactions, as you can see here, and we set the transactions as an output. And let's assume that I need to add a new condition. So the beneficiary of those transactions should be a person. So you see, I add a person here, and I select the two, and very easily I can add a link between the two. And that's the way we built the query in I2. So that's very convenient, easy, no needs to know IT language, no way to type select from and so on and so on. You are fully dedicated to visual investigation. And that's very close to what it has been explained previously on the roadmap. It would help to have dedicated people really doing only visual investigation, and they would not have to maintain the system, to do the queries, to update the index or whatever. It would be done automatically. So that's very close to the recommendation of the roadmap previously presented. Sorry, and here you can set very simply, as you know, conditions on that query, and then you run the query and you obtain the results. And those you want to observe those results, you just have to copy them on the chart. And here you start your visual investigation, and this is what you can see here. You have the account and all the accounts and all the transactions, but we are a little bit disappointed because there is nothing to observe here. It's too simple. Perfect. The good news is that in my investigation, I also want to see if there is other companies which has the same behavior than Goupil. In that case, I would use a new visual query, and this is same behavior than Goupil. If you want, I can just very quickly open it to let you see what I did. It's the same query, except the fact that the other organization should be involved in an event, and this event is same behavior than Goupil. And here, bingo, you make the connection between the deductive thinking I presented previously, so something which has been calculated previously, and the inductive thinking used by I2. And that's the reason why during that presentation, I will show also that we can directly connect I2 to Qradar as an example, which is the IBM most famous tool for cyber detection. So I want to run that query. I obtain the results, and then I want to compare that result with what I already built. And then you see immediately on the chart, and that's the purpose of I2. If you remember my presentation of Actionable Intelligence, that's immediately we are able to see the complex path between that. I will just reorganize to have a better view. And within our network, we now have very easily and quickly the common points. I will just isolate those two ones because this is the ones I could be interested in. So I will just add a frame on those. I will change the color to something. So you see, it's also the name of the software is Analyst Notebook. So it means that you create the data using connectors, using existing databases, but also you can note very simply what you are interested in. And now we could start our investigation. So do we have some strange behavior behind that? And to do, I will just go on the Analyze menu, ask to display bar chart and histograms. This is here. And I would do some time analysis as an histogram. It would be displayed here. And you see that we have the activity displayed over the day. So from 8 in the morning until 6 in the afternoon. That's nice. And this is regular activity, business hours. Nothing so strange. But I also discovered that here at between 1 and 1:15 in the morning, I have 41 transactions. That's very interesting because this is something abnormal. Nice. I will do an heat matrix and search for the transaction type. Sorry. The transaction type here. I will go to the histograms and I discover that all those transactions are online shopping. And you see that online shopping type have never been reused after. So that's something strange I want to investigate. So I just click on it. And you see it's immediately selected on the chart. And Again, remember I told you that actionable intelligence is also based on observation. I discovered that this is all the transactions which make the links between the two bank accounts I have some suspicious on. That's very interesting. So I want to focus on that investigation. I will isolate that and display that over the time. Just 2 seconds, sorry. Display over the time. And here, in 2 clicks, few seconds, you discover something which is, for me, very important when we are talking about fraudulent activity. Because, so this is the 2 accounts we are interested in, and you discover that exactly at the same time here, there is one transaction which goes to that account, another transaction goes to that account, and that's it. Then, few seconds later, another transactions exactly at the same time than for those 2 accounts go to that account, And this is a perfect way to understand an automatized attack to extract money. And if we have a deep investigation of the amount, we could discover that this is the amount which are just below the level of alert set in our automatized detecting tool. And you see that here we have the perfect example of how the money has been stolen from those accounts and goes to all those accounts, and that's it. And then if you need to report that to the court or to your management, you can just select everything, copy, and open, I don't know, PowerPoint, Word, and paste it, and that's it. And it works. So it's a good way to do some reporting here. Okay, so that's the first way of investigation. I will go back to my previous chart, and now I want to investigate who could be behind those accounts. And to do that, everything is selected, and I will search for the linkage. To achieve that, I will use the expand with conditions, and the system will search automatically what could be linked to those accounts, and I discover that there is other transactions which could be linked to those accounts, but this is not what I want. I want to see the companies who could have access to those accounts. So I just select and copy to the chart. And here it has been automatically added on the chart. And if I analyze and list the items, I have here the list of all the companies which has been added. So this is the network of beneficiaries of the transactions I want to investigate. And by reading that, I discovered this is mostly online shops, which makes sense because the type of transaction was online shopping. So now I want to compare that with the information about the administrators of those accounts and things like that. As an analyst, I have done a search on that. I could use the who is, and I have the information about who administrates that account, which are the declared address, and things like that. And I want to compare that to the chart. So I will use an import specification. I will open that one. I will just open it for a few seconds to let you see how it works as well. So you have information about, this is a standard Excel file, in fact, with the domain name, the registry domain, all those information, the contact email. So you see it's standard information about websites. And here I did a mapping. So you see that it's IT cyber information. I convert that into a chart, and this is that chart I want to compare with mine. And just click on import, and you see that the system, you remember in my slides, I explained you that I2 is also a good way to search for duplicates, for possible same identity and so on. That's an example here because the system awares me that there is existing stuff to be compared, and I obtain that chart. And you see that now, again, in few clicks, it was my starting point in yellow here. I had all the transactions, and now I'm able to investigate who could be behind, where the money goes. And we see that we have one administrator, which is the same for all those online shops. And it's the same for those two and the same for those two. If you want, I can just zoom a little bit. Let you see what we have here. So this is the starting point, the account. And here, so those two accounts with that person. And then if we want to further investigate, we could use this very useful and famous fine matching entities within our system. And here the system tells me that super deal and super deals could be the same, which makes sense. So I could select the two and merge, and it would be merged on the chart. So you see that our network would be simplified. Online by web with Y and I should be the same. So I will do a merging. And here as well, that's very important because those two persons, Pierre-Jean and Pierre-Jeanne, should be the same. So I select and I merge them. And you see that by doing that, I reorganize my chart. Just take this one and do. And you see that it becomes very, still by observing, it's become very, very interesting that all the transactions going to those accounts where the owner of those accounts were those different companies, but they are all administrated, managed by the same person. And here we have another network and another set of stuff. And if we want to investigate if there is a possible connection between that one and that one, what we can do now, and it would be the last step of that presentation, is search for all the addresses and put them on a map. So you see, I will just pin the map here, select everything, and add to the map. And I would discover where those sits. So you see, it's in Jordan, and I can select. So that one is close to those ones, and then I can do, to continue my investigation, a distance map, and see this is the one within 1 to 3 kilometers to so 0 to 1 kilometers. Sorry. To my point of interest, and I discover that very close to my starting point I have those ones, and I can continue like that my investigation by observing other hidden relations. So during that demonstration I show how I2 visual investigation could be used to investigate complex paths of money, to search for possible duplicates or homonyms, and do some geographical investigations. And there is the last point, if we remember what I was searching for. Do we have information about the social media on that? And here, Pierre-Jeanne, as an example, directly from I2, I can search for his profile. In my sample, it would be Facebook and LinkedIn, because I do not have already set avatars. I will search for that information. I will just, for time constraint, I will do so that network search, and you see that the system will automatically, let's hope it would work. Yes, the two social medias I select, they would search for Pierre-Jeanne. So this is exactly the results I obtained here. The system will do the same for LinkedIn using the avatars. So I'll be connected to LinkedIn, search for Pierre-Jeanne again. the information would be, and this is something which is done live. So here I have the internet connections. The query is sent to those social media APIs, and the results would be retrieved and displayed on the chart. So we are still on the way to be logged in. I will just close because we do not have enough time and show the results on the chart, and you would discover how we could continue our investigation. And here, so you see, so it's very simple and short examples of what could be run. But you see, it was my search, and this is the Pierre Jan, which has been discovered in that case. This is a Facebook, and then if I want, I can continue to do some expand the connection, and I want to have the friends and the likes. Just sorry, reduce the number of scans until 5. And then you would have those informations. And if you remember my starting point for investigation, I would be able to search for what has been published by that social media account. And I could discover that he published the picture of his new Ferrari or whatever. And then it would help to understand the final purpose of that money. And you see, it's exactly the way visual investigation and I2 is working by adding the level of informations you are interested in. Okay. So it was the first example on how I2 could be used to observe and investigate a flow of money. And the second part of that demonstration would be a real case we worked on for a customer to a complex and complete cyber investigation. So I will try to, just add those information to let you see the charts. Okay, so I will close all those charts because I do not need them anymore. And I will start a new investigation. And here, regarding the time, I will just give you the final chart we built, and we would have an explanation on it. Sorry. That's one. So the starting point of that investigation was a Qradar, which detects an alert on a malware. And this alert on the malware was done on a certification server, and that certification server was dedicated to obtaining an official certification, which gives you a legal role to whatever. So it was the starting point. We use I2 step by step to understand what could be behind this malware. So we discovered that this malware was connected, so as you can see here, to this certification server. And that certification server had a connection with an IP and with a user. And we have the connections, and we discovered that exactly at the same time, I probably forgot to display here the time bar, sorry. Exactly at the same time, so the connection between the IP and the certification server, the user sends comments about alter users and things like that. And then there is a copy base and a delete. So it's a very strange behavior regarding that, especially because if we go on this exam website, we also discover that it was get and post. So really here we have the contextualization of this alert. So when the malware occurs, what has been done before is that stuff. And then we were able to say, okay, so it could be that malware has been placed on our network to hide that activity, to hide that leak of information. So it was the starting point of our investigation, and especially because as well we discover that there is another alert provided by Qradar, and here it was the alert about the use of a VPN connection by an employee who also is physically on the at office, at the office. And this is what we have here. So you see, so this is the alert. So this alert occurred at that time, and we have the cyber traffic here, and the MAC address of the regular employee, and we discover that this employee does not use the standard MAC address, but this is another MAC address after the VPN connection. So you see here, this is the VPN connection, and here this is when it gets officially in at the office. So we know that is at the office, but there is some VPN connection with cyber traffic. So it was very interesting, especially because we were able, using I2, to make the connection over the time between that cyber alert and the fact that the data has been stolen from the website, and that alert that VPN has been used exactly at the same time by a MAC address which is not the regular MAC address of the users. And we continue the investigation, and we discover that this new MAC address, which used the VPN connection of that person who is physically on site, works in the same place. So this is what we can see here. If you want, I can zoom on this. Okay, so they work at the same place of that guy. Okay, so it means that for him it was quite easy to stole the credentials. So this is most probably what happened here. And then also we were able, using the social media plugins, to discover that this guy possibly used that username, which is closed, and he likes lots of forums on the publication, which are published by groups which could be linked to a pseudonym who sold the, I'm sorry, I need to go, whoops, on that one. It would be easier if who sold the questions on the dark web, because we also have some connectors on the dark web. Okay, so it means that within hours we were able to create that chart to make the correlation between those two Qradar cyber alerts and make a link, even if you do not have any data to link that, but the behavior, and if you observe all those information together, you discover that this is the final goal of this attack. And your system, your detection system, just detect 2 incidents. But by using I2, you are able to make the full motivation of that and really discover that the malware was definitely done to hide what was done previously, to stall the questions and the answers of this official certifications to be resell on the dark web. So you see, it's very easy to have that. And that's it, because I think that we are 5 minutes ahead the time. So I do my best to do the live presentation. I will let the team to conclude, and probably also share with us and with all the panelists the questions you had during the presentation. Thanks a lot for your time, and now TBM team, stage is yours for Q&A and conclusions.
So much, Nicholas. You at this moment. You can actually access your Facebook and Instagram. So you can imagine all those posts that have been posted on social and how this tool can actually track, even if you don't know who I am, maybe by name or by face, or met me in person, but you can be able to access this kind of information. It's shocking, but at the same time, it makes you think about how can you secure your environment, how can you secure your data, and how can you track what is happening outside your environment. So is anyone within the chat have a question, want to ask in regards to maybe the first presentation shared by Abraham about your security roadmap journey, or on what Nicholas has shared about the solution on I2 and how to detect a cyber threat, a fraudulent activity? Share your questions on the chat. As previously, I've asked a few questions on the chat, and I'll just read them out at least so that you may think about your security environment. Do you have a standardized methodology during investigation? How do you manage your investigation? Do you have the ability to visualize your threat? As I2 is showcasing the visual aspect about it. So what are the kind of threats you're facing? Or maybe you want to understand more about this tool, which is I2. So questions, feel free to share any questions. You can raise your hand. I'll let you speak. You can type it in onto the chat. Our panelists are open to share or assist on those burning questions. Let it not burn you. Rather, let us cool off your curiosity.
Yeah, as the panelists think about the questions that they can ask, I would also like to challenge, no, sorry, not the panelists, the attendees, sorry, the attendees. I would like to challenge the attendees from what we have seen. We have seen the power of it where it maps. You have a visual representation of your threat. So because of that, you're able to quickly come up with correlations. That's a very powerful tool. So my challenge to the attendees is, first of all, how do you manage your cybersecurity threats? How do you manage your breaches? How do you analyze them? You see, how can we help with that? Please feel free to ask, because I know out of experience in this particular market, and even in the developed market, they have similar issues of, investigating and how to investigate. What methodology do you use? How do you map your threats for your analysts? So please feel free to ask whilst we have the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abraham. Earlier on, Jacinta had raised her hand. If Jacinta is still on the line, maybe you can ask a question. You can raise your hand and I'll allow you to speak. Secondly, yes, I've just been, somebody has just asked, can I get the presentation after this? Yes, we shall share with you the presentation slide after this. But before that, there's a question. How can we achieve global visibility in complex enterprise networks in a bank environment? That's the question. I repeat, how can we achieve global visibility in complex enterprise networks in a bank? So any of my panelists can respond to that question. Thank you for the question.
So thanks. I can start by explaining how from the I2 point of view it could be achieved, and then I think that Abraham could add some information about how the result could be used. But in the case of I2, so within I2 we have a tool dedicated to connectivity. So it means that you could connect I2 to any data sources you want to investigate. So during that presentation, I show how we could be connected to the social media, because this is the most easiest and the most funny one. But in the case of the bank, we are very often connected to first the core banking. So it means that directly from I2, you can send a query to the core banking system to search for all the transactions from that account to that country, that amount between that date, and so on and so on and so on. Then you want also to be connected to the SIM or the SOC data. So that's the reason why we have some pre-existing connectors to Qradar, but also to Splunk, also to connectors to main tools used for the cyber threat detection. And also we could be connected to, and this is the case for a big bank we work with currently, to the CRM. So to have the information about the customers. So the name of the customers, the name of the representative of that customers, and all that stuff. And you do those queries, and step by step you add the results on the chart to obtain the full picture. And once you obtain the full picture, you use most of the analytical functions I show on the chart to search for hidden relations, complex networks, and all that stuff. And those results would be used to perform your investigation.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, in assisting me to answer that question. So to answer the question again, because Nicholas has answered it from an I2 point of view, so I will answer it from, like I said, I am a SIEM specialist, and a SIEM stands for, it's SIEM, Security Information Event Management. And in fact, there is a connector between a SIEM and I2, all right? So I2, you can have two options. You can have I2 plug in into your data sources directly, or you can just have I2 plug in into the SIEM and get all the data from the SIEM. But so that's a very good question. How do you have global visibility? So global visibility and the understanding of global visibility is an important part of the security roadmap, which we just discussed. All right. So if you're a bank, you must understand or categorize or prioritize your data with regards to priorities. For example, your core banking is more important and has a higher priority. Let's say your payment systems, your core banking, your SWIFT, and all of that. You need to structure them and organize them fast. Even before you onboard them onto any system, you have to have a structured manner on how you understand your data sets in your environment. Now, once you have done that, you then onboard them onto, number one, there are two options, either a SIEM or I2. So if you onboard them into a SIEM, all of your data, that would be now your core banking, that would be your operating systems, that would be your databases, it would be your network devices, your security devices, your SWIFT, and everything. So now you have global visibility where you have everything under one console. You can view all of your data. You have all of your data in your environment in one console. All right. And then now you deploy your security policies on the SIEM, and then you progress from there. And then now you put Resilient 2 on top of the SIEM. So Resilient will receive data from the SIEM. Alternatively, you can have those data sets to go straight to Resilient. So depending on your situation, depending on your security roadmap, depending on your investments you have made, those are the two approaches you'd have. So in short, to have global visibility, you first, as a prerequisite, before even purchasing any security tool, you must prioritize and structure your data sets, all right, and give them, a ranking. And then now from there, you onboard them onto security solutions, so that you can view them in a single console. Now that's with regards to global visibility of a bank. I hope we have answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Abraham. Yes, if there's any last question, any other question apart from the next question that is in regards to Nicholas. In what type of context or scope is the I2 visualization, in what type of context or scope is the I2 visual investigation best? That's the question.
It's a tough question. I think that it's the best when you need to cross-check non-homogeneous data together. So this is really when you want to have a full view of a phenomena, and to have that for precise purposes. Very often I said that the strongest competitor of I2 is Excel, because most of when you start an investigation, you put all your data in Excel, and then you try to do some correlation, some matrix, and things like that. And sometimes you reach the point that when you use Excel, you need a third dimension for your calculation. And this is here that I2 really sits, to give a third dimension to your Excel sheets. And this is really where I2 could help to put together all the data you need to correlate together, to cross-check together, for also giving precise summarization of situation, and to be disseminated to non-specialists of your domain. So very often as well, I2 is used as an example by the SOC team or the SIM team to explain a complex threat to the management, to the court. As well, it could be used by a legal department of a bank to explain a money laundering to an FIU and all that stuff. So that really the purpose of I2 is to disseminate complex situation to non-specialists of the domain. And then it could be used to all the domain. So I2 is not dedicated to cyber investigation, or to money laundering investigation, or to crime investigation. This is just dedicated to investigation in that way.
Right. To also help add or to contribute to that answer, first of all, I would like to say, out of experience, I2 as a solution by itself is one of the most powerful solutions I have seen with regards to link analysis. Okay, so that's a good question. In short, I mean, in what context is link analysis applicable, right? So if you notice through the demo which Nicholas took us through, first there was a situation whereby data was just in rows and columns, right? Or data. So if data is in rows and columns, and then now you map it out so that it forms a relational link analysis. If you don't mind me using that explanation, it makes it simpler for the investigator to understand what's going on. Now, from the point of view of a SIM, we first, you have events that stream in, or logs that stream in from your environment, your core applications, your network, your operating systems, etc., and from your network devices, and they stream in as events. And then now you depend on methodology on how to group that data and aggregate that data and proceed. Now, if you can take that data that is coming in the form of rows and columns, and then aggregating it into charts, whatnot. Now, when you have a link analysis, when data or when let's say entities are linked visually, it increases the ability of the analyst to understand what's going on. So link analysis, in my view, Nicholas will correct me if I'm wrong, is really the ultimate for an analyst. So it is very applicable, and it is something that should be considered as an optimized approach for the security roadmap we discussed. Remember, there was section 1 to section 5. So once now you find yourself that you're using link analysis regularly, you really are now on an optimized position. So it is the best way for an analyst to investigate a solution. So it's very applicable. Yeah, and the SIM has its own capabilities to do link analysis, but I2 is now dedicated for link analysis. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
No, you're perfectly right, and I really appreciate the definition you give about I2, and more than that, also this is what we discover for the cyber threat hunting or the cyber investigation, is that if you use the standard, because you're right, there is some link analysis module in Qradar as an example, but it would be done only on the IT or the cyber data. The main purpose of I2, as you explained, is doing and running that link analysis on the complete set of data to really investigate the motivation of an attack. And if I will conclude that answer just by giving you the example why most of the mobile phone companies are using I2 for their investigation, despite they already have very complex and powerful artificial intelligence tool to detect the fraud. This is just because they need to understand the context of the fraud which has been discovered. And this is what I explained at the beginning. So be able to discover the two ends, so the beginning and the end of the fraud, of the threat, within not only their own data, not only their own data center, but the complete environment on when they are working. So that's the reason why they are using I2 since years, more than 10 years, and they continue to use it daily to really make the contextualization of what has been discovered by the detection tool to add all the other informations they want.
Thank you so much, Abraham and Nicola, for your response on that question. I'd like to ask to finalize with two more last questions. One is I2, the difference between I2 difference, sorry about that, is I2 different to what is called EDR or XDR like solution? What is the difference between EDR or XDR solution in regards to I2? Are they the same or are they different? Second question, How well has this tool captured enterprises that have opted for cloud computing architecture? How well has this tool captured enterprises that have opted for cloud computing architecture? So those are the last two questions we will take. And as my panelists respond to those two questions, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn at TBM Limited. Or if you have further more questions or you want more one-on-one, maybe in-depth about the I2 solution, you can email us at marketing@tbm.co.ke or at info@tbm.co.ke. Thank you. Panelists, please respond. Thank you.
So if you want, I will start by answering the second question because I'm not able to answer the first one. So the second question is really about I2 and the cloud. So I will give you two answers. The first is if you want to use I2 on an existing cloud environment, of course, all of our solutions are Dockerizable and could work on this kind of infrastructure. And if the question is about how to apply a link and visual analysis and investigation for a company who already had deployed all the stuff on the cloud, the answer would be, I would say for I2 it would be business as usual because it could be on the cloud or on the on-prem servers. You would have the traces, and those traces would be ingested and used by I2 for visual investigation. So really, in the point of view of I2, cloud or non-cloud is not that is not the question, definitely. So we use it in the same way of what you want to achieve. And for the first question, I will let Abraham answer.
Thank you, Nicholas. So I'll just contribute to the second question as well. With cloud or non-cloud, threats still exist. Cyber threats still exist. The only difference is that on cloud, your infrastructure management is more efficient. You see, it's just more, it's a more efficient way of managing infrastructure resources. But nonetheless, cloud or not, threats are still there, and threats need to be managed proactively and in an automated fashion. So yes, the answer is yes, I2 is very relevant on the cloud space. Now, on the first question, is I2 an EDR? So this is a good question. So let me just answer it directly. I2 is not an EDR. An EDR is a cybersecurity solution that's used for endpoints. Now, a good example would be, let's say, a solution that does patch management for an organization. So if you give an example, let's say for a bank that has, let's say, multiple branches across a country and even other countries, and they need all of those branches, let's say it has 150 branches scattered across, let's say, the country of Kenya and other branches in the neighboring countries. So it has maybe a total of 200 branches, and the bank needs for the servers to be up to scale, and the endpoints that the clients use also to be up to scale. So that, yes, from my understanding, that's an EDR. It manages endpoints. It manages and protects endpoints, especially with regards to patching and also configuration. All right. So that is that. But now I2 is a solution for cybersecurity intelligence. It is a solution for investigating cybersecurity breaches. An EDR is a solution that will help to improve your security and compliance portfolio of your infrastructure, right? But so those are the differences. So let's say, for example, you have done an investigation on I2 on a certain case whereby vulnerabilities are exploited. Vulnerabilities have been exploited. Vulnerabilities have been exploited because of a lack of maybe patching or something. And you have done the investigation of vulnerabilities, and we have seen the best way to close that gap is for a patch for patching for various servers. So as an incident response measure recommended by I2, whose main purpose is analysis and investigation, and coming up with root cause analysis reports, they would now issue a standardized report for the patch management team or for the EDR team to go ahead and patch the specific servers with the specific vulnerabilities so that the security gap is closed. So those are the differences. And just to finalize on what I'm saying, it is important for all of us who are in the cybersecurity space and all of that to understand the different types of security solutions from a generic point of view. All right. So what's a DAM, or database activity monitoring? What is an EDR? But because they all contribute, they all work together with investigation and analysis. Because once the analysis is done, it's handed over to the incident response team to harden. So I hope that answers the question between the difference between an EDR and I2.
Thank you so much, Abraham, Nicholas, for answering questions asked by the guests today. So as we conclude, I'd like to say thank you very much for everyone attending this webinar. We apologize we have taken longer, but we appreciate the questions, and we hope that we have answered the burning questions or any other pending questions that you would like to have asked during the presentation. Nicholas, thank you so much for having the time to give us through the presentation.
That's my pleasure. Thanks to you.
Abraham, we thank you for taking the time also to assist and also respond to the questions. And Mr. Evans, thank you so much for being part of the team and also assisting us in the questions. All right.
Thank you.
In case anyone has wants to go to the next step, maybe a one-on-one and in-depth, as I stated earlier, you can email us. But as for the recording, we have recorded this webinar. So in case you missed or you joined in late, we shall share with you the recorded version so that you may be able to learn or know more about I2. So shukran and have a lovely day. And to those who are starting their weekend, enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye, everyone.